So let me tell you why I care so deeply about this topic and why I believe end of life planning isn't about death. It's about life. It's about love, empowerment, and peace of mind. So it started 27 years ago. I was a newly divorced mom, single parent. I had a 6-year-old, my daughter Danielle. We lived in Colorado at the time, and all of my nuclear family actually lived in South Dakota. So after the divorce, I had moved into a new fun little neighborhood. There was great kids around for Danielle to play with, and it was a safe neighborhood. I always felt real good about it. But we settled into our new lifestyle pretty easily. And then one day, my daughter came home and said what most 6-year-old children say most times in their life: Mom, can we get a dog? And I said, no, we're not getting a dog. No, I don't want a dog. So we went on, and maybe the next, I don't know, week, she came home again and said, Mom, can we get a dog? And I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me think about this, because I own my own house now. It was just she and I. There's no reason why I couldn't get a dog if I didn't want to get a dog. So guess what? I told her, okay, we'll get a dog. But if we're going to get a dog, we're going to a rescue. We're not going to go to a puppy place. We're going to go get a rescue dog, because it will be somebody that needs us as much as we need them, or something. So, okay, cool. We planned a day, an outing, and we went to the local rescue. And we walked kind of through the kennels. And as we walked through the kennels, they were barking dogs and rough. And the energy was making me crazy. And I'm thinking, this is not a good idea. I do not want to get a dog. We walked through another set of kennels, and there was one particular dog that was sitting in the kennel, and she wasn't up on the kennel barking and just being all crazy. She sat back in the kennel and she just looked at me with her big eyes. She was a black lab. I read the little label on the kennel, and it was, female, unknown. They thought she was probably abused because she was very shy and very timid. And I said, what about this dog? Can we take this dog out to the yard? And sure. She's not very friendly, though. I mean, she's not mean, but she's not very friendly. I'm like, that's okay. Let's take her out to the yard. And we took her out and spent a little time with her. And she never got opened up tremendously, but she didn't stay that shy, timid self. She bonded with us, I felt like, pretty quickly. So I said, I'm kind of interested in this. Now, back in those days, we're talking 27 years ago, you could actually take a pet home for 24 hours and do like a trial run. So if you could see if it meshed with your home and all that good kind of stuff. If you don't like it, you could bring it right back. Isn't that horrible? But anyway, okay. So we decided, let's go take Shadow home. Let's try and see how it's going to work with her. So we were doing the paperwork, and as we were doing the paperwork, Danielle was sitting on the chair and I was signing off and all this good stuff. And Shadow put her head up on Danielle's lap like this, where she's sitting here. She looked up at Danielle like, just love me. And my heart melted, and I just knew we weren't going to bring this dog back. But anyway, we took her home. I knew we weren't going to bring her back. That was okay. And right away she fit into our family. It didn't take any bit of time at all, and her timidness came out. She would start to pay attention if she heard things outside, which made me feel safe. And she slept with Danielle every single night. So I would go in her room, and you know how every parent's dream is the kids are asleep. So I would go and check on Danielle when she was asleep, and I would see Shadow curled up beside Danielle, just laying there. And Shadow would never be asleep yet. She would look at me and say, I got you, Mom. I got you. She's safe. And I felt good. And I would go on to bed. So we'd take her to the local park where she would jump. There was a little stream going through it. It was only like a block and a half from our house. And Shadow would jump over the stream and jump back again. And there was a bridge we'd walk. So we'd stand on the bridge and watch her jump over and back. And then all of a sudden she'd jump in. That's like, Shadow. And then we'd take her home and give her a bath. But it was a good time in our life. And the three of us made a great family, and life was good. So we did that. Fast forward, 2 years. Daniel would have been 7.5, almost 8 years old. And I was in the kitchen one Saturday morning, and it was a typical Saturday morning. I was doing mom stuff, cooking, cleaning, that kind of stuff when Danielle was out playing with the neighborhood kids. And Saturdays were days where Shadow would go across the road for a play date with her buddy, Red. So she was over next door at the neighbor's house with Red, and we were all doing our all thing. And it was also normal until it wasn't. The door burst open. Danielle came in screaming, "Mom! Mom! Shadow!" Yeah, you know where that's going. So I went out with Danielle, and we went, she took me to the street, and I saw what she saw. And although we lived in a nice, quiet little neighborhood, the street next to us had traffic going this way. It was like a 4-lane, I think 2 lanes this way, a turning lane, and 2 lanes that way. And somehow Shadow and Red had gotten out of the neighbor's yard, and Shadow found her way onto this busy street and was hit. And I still don't know exactly how Danielle knew this. She had been out there, and how if she had seen the dogs get out and then followed her and saw Shadow get hit. But I saw what Danielle saw at that point, and Shadow was laying on the street, and the cars are going by, and Danielle's standing on the corner yelling, "Shadow, Shadow." I'm like, "Danielle, stop, stop. You don't want her to get up. She'll get hit again." Cars were swerving around her. So I tippy-toed through the traffic, and I knew it wasn't good. And I knew it wasn't good right away. But I scooped Shadow up, and I took her back to the house, and thankfully, it didn't take long for her to pass. And she did pass in with us in our arms. And that was so very, very special. So, gosh, that was a tough day. But it was an important time in our life. It was an important time for me, and it was an important time for Danielle, because we both had very many lessons to learn. And that day, Danielle, because she had actually been old enough to learn about death and dying, she didn't know much because I wasn't a good teacher. But Shadow was. And on that day, Danielle not only learned what death was, she learned what it felt like. And it was forever changing. And for me, I learned what it was like to see my child grieve. And she grieved, and it was terrible. And I did too. But at the same point, I think any parent can agree, when you watch your child grieve, it's just different than your own grief. I think that's true. But it was life-changing for both of us, not only for her, but for me, because I watched it all unfold in front of me. So fast forward a couple weeks later, and the shock had kind of wore off, per se. Danny's reaction to me meant everything. And I thought, while I was coming home from work one day, I thought, that was a big deal. What if something happened to me? What if a teacher or a pastor or a special friend of mine had to go to Danielle and tell her that had happened to me? I had just got done watching my daughter go through this. And what if that happened to me? She wasn't prepared at all, nor was I. So, wow, time to start hitting home. And the realization was a big deal. I had some conversations immediately with my sister about guardianship, because at that point it just wasn't an option for Danielle to live with her dad or anybody on her dad's side. But my nuclear family, always in South Dakota, there was nobody there to take care of her. I quickly put together a will, which included guardianship. I didn't have a lot because I was still relatively newly divorced. But the other thing I started doing was talking to my daughter about this. What would happen to her if something happened to me? And the conversations were kind of magical, actually. Once we got past the, oh shoot, this could actually happen, and the reality that this could actually happen, we had some really good conversations, not scary ones. She was 8 years old, and the fact was we were by ourselves in Colorado. There was no other family members here, but I had good friends. I had good connections. We had good neighbors. We had some solid family people in our life, even though they weren't blood relatives. But still, she knew after these conversations that if something happened to me, she was going to live with my sister, her Aunt Lynette. She knew she would get better food. She knew she would get to have fun with her cousins, whom she adored and didn't get to see very often. She knew that holidays would be full of family in South Dakota. That wasn't always the case in Colorado. And I think truly by the time we had all come through these conversations, she was kind of ready to go with her Aunt Lynette. And I'm like, what? I've done my job. Nonetheless, it all turned out pretty well because we still have conversations about death to this day. My daughter is very, very accepting of death, and I believe she's realistic about death. And she's got 3 fur babies. Imagine that. So true. And every once in a while, she still throws it in my face that, hey, if I would have gotten to go live with Aunt Lynette, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm like, oh, yes, you're right, dearie, you're right. That story stayed with me, and that event stayed with me through the next 20 some years. And it's why I do what I do today, because I can't think of a more meaningful cause than talking to your family about what will happen to them if something happens to you. I don't know what's more important than that. If nothing happens to you, wonderful. Guess what? My daughter has a very, very, very good relationship with death. I have a very good relationship with death, I believe. We never really know until we're tested, but so far, so good. But I talk about being prepared for death and dying over and over and over again in every different way that I can possibly think of. Because I think that the more you talk about it, the more, for lack of a better term, acceptable or realistic it can be. And if it can even help one person have a better experience with their own death and with their kids accepting their own death, I think, done my job. Hey, done my job. I'm Loretta Omland. My business is Living Life Defined because you want to do it your way. And I help people get prepared for their end of life.